In this video, I'm going to talk about the build that I used in New World Closed Beta. We're first going to start with the Great Axe because that was what I was using 90% of the time. Immediately, I just want to talk about the abilities I used and why I used them, and then also why I did not use other abilities in the tree. So let's first start out with the abilities that I did use and the passives that I also used as well. So I first went with Greed. So Greed, as it says here, light attacks with your Great Axe give you 5% damage, and that lasts for 5 seconds. So this can give you a 15% damage increase. Now, I was using light attacks a lot, mainly because the honing was so good. So if a player was trying to run away from me, I light attack, I hit them in the back, I can keep doing that. Now the key is to space out your light attacks from your first light attack to your second with about a half second or 1 second delay, because they're going to either be spamming their dodges and they most likely won't time their dodges to your attacks. So you could actually get 2 light attacks off within about a 2-second window. And then right when they ran out of stamina because you're light attacking them, you can follow up with your light attack heavy attack combo and you're getting a 15% damage increase on all that. And the next passive I went with is Death Embrace. This seems like a no-brainer because armor will be, if you're fighting a tank and they have, 2,000 plus armor, that's 200% resistant or 200 points resistance that you don't have to deal with. That's a pretty good must. I'm just going to go through the passives first and I'll go through the abilities. Next is Critical Gains. Critical Gains, I can't speak. Heal yourself for 10% of the critical damage done. That's a must. Also went with Charge. I went with Charge because you need a gap closer. Not only do you need a gap closer, but you can use Charge to combo into your normal attacks. So you could do a light attack or heavy attack, and then right when you see you get the damage off a heavy attack or however you're ending the combo, you charge, and it's basically like a third attack. So a really quick burst damage. So I used it for 2 reasons. The one reason I just mentioned, to burst somebody down really quickly, and also to gap close people trying to run away and trying to heal and then fuck them up. The next passive I went with is Frustration. This is pretty much guaranteed. You're always going to have this passive up because most people will try to block your attack and do not realize you're getting 15% damage with this. So pair Frustration with Greed, that's 30% extra damage that you could have. Keen Edge, increase critical damage by 10%, and that's a definite must. Feed is also a must. So generally, you'll probably instantly kill somebody, whether they're 40 or 30%, if they're especially with their light armor or they're not having a lot of constitution. So if that's the case, you're still going to get healed quite a bit, even though it may not be as much as somebody with, a lot more constitution. So you're only going to be getting 1 hit, pretty much 1 or 2 hits off if somebody only has 30% health, and the healing won't be as great as something like Critical Gains. Then you have Critical Condition. This, I was on the fence about this to begin with, specifically for the reason I just mentioned, where you could instantly, you would instantly pretty much kill somebody the moment they had 30% health or even less than 50%, right? So this didn't seem like it was a must. But the more people were leveling up, more people were doing tankier builds, sword and shield, a lot of constitution. So this is kind of a great way to completely, once you get them down at that 30%, you can finish them off pretty quickly because you're going to be critting so much. It's not so much for the self-sustain, but it's more so, hey, I want to finish this guy quickly. So these are the passives that I got in the Reaper tree. So I already did the charge ability, and the next ability I went with is Full Reap. So this is where you can pull the foes to you within an 8-meter range, right? And you heal yourself for 30% of the damage done for Reap. And Reap is a 2-hit attack. Reap will do the first damage when it connects the pull, and then once you pull somebody towards them, you do a second attack if you go all the way into it, and you do a spin attack, which will also heal you for 30% of the damage done. Now there's one issue with Reap, and it's actually a bug with Reap right now, where once you get the first pull, so you pull somebody towards you, they can instantly. New World has a mechanic in the game where after you get CC'd, well, supposed to, after you get CC'd back to back in numerous succession, you will get a free dodge roll, and you'll hear a weird noise to it. It's like, real, like a really weird noise. And you can dodge. You get a light roll dodge, whether you're in heavy or medium. You'll know, obviously you got that free CC dodge roll because it doesn't consume any stamina, and you can only use it in specific scenarios. Well, it's bugged with Reap, where once you reach somebody, they get that free dodge roll no matter what. So this second attack here will never land. Now, I'm assuming that this is a bug, because it has to be, and this is the reason why I chose to keep this build in for beta and hopefully for launch. So that should not happen, and it should only happen when you're getting CC'd back to back from hammer or a spear, but instead it's happening just from this first pull. So if they fix that, then this will be in a much better spot, and I really, really hope it is a bug, and if not, that's going to be a shame, because I'll honestly probably drop this last attack here, because then it would only be, most people will get the hang of it and know that they can just dodge roll out of it and never get hit by it. And Bloodlust is a must, because most of the time you're going to be chasing people down, and it doesn't always proc all the time if you're close to somebody, but it'll proc, it works pretty well when you're further away from somebody. But if you're right on top of somebody, it's a little iffy on how it procs. So I hope they can fix that as well. Because sometimes I don't get the 50% more damage right on when I'm on top of somebody. So with all this combined, this is this is a lot of extra damage. 45% extra damage from all of this, from these 3 buffs. That's a lot more damage, especially when you're in a group. You're fighting more guys. You're doing group PvP, and there's 4 guys right in front of your face trying to well on you. Chances are you can take them down before you get taken down. Now, some of you may be asking, hey, why did you not go with Execute, man? Execute is fucking great. You get 200% weapon damage, and if they're below 30 or below 50%, it's 300%, right? Well, Execute it's there to draw you in to think that it's actually good. A few reasons why it's not good and why I don't use it. It's single target, 1. 2, the hitbox on it is it's hard to hit. It's really hard to land. You could land it. I can not even move, and you may miss the attack, because if you hit it to the right or left of me, barely, within like 2 inches of me, it's not going to hit me. There's no AoE capability to it. Purely single target. Now you might be thinking this could be, paired to kill healers really quickly or finish somebody off. I just find that it's not the case, just because what I just mentioned before, it's hard to hit and it's easy to dodge. It's way easy to see it coming, because the wind up on it is so long. You jump up in the air, you pull your axe back, then you throw it down on the ground. It's just way too easy to dodge, way too easy to see it coming, and the only time I would ever even recommend using it is if you're able to drain some of my stamina and they're in their exhausted state for 3 seconds where they can't move at all, they can't block, they can't dodge. This would be the time to do it. But again, the execute takes 1 to 2 seconds to even come out, so if you have any sort of latency, you may not even land this off in time. Alright, I'll talk about more with execute 2 when I get to the gravity well. So the passives I get in Mauler are heavy pull, so heavy attacks pull foes closer to you. Enduring strike, I get that as well, so 20% damage reduction. And gravity. After you cause a pull, your foe is held still for 30% longer, because you just want to keep people as close to you as possible when you have Great Axe. You want people to be stacked around you. You want people to surround you. That is where the Great Axe shines. I do not go with Maelstrom, and I do not go with Whirlwind. Whirlwind is just too easy. You can get knocked out of it, no matter what. You can get knocked down because there's no grit on it. Get stunned out of it. So you may only get 1 attack off before you get knocked. You get knocked out of it. So there's really no point in ever using this weapon or using this ability unless they add grit to it. Maelstrom, on the other hand, it's good. It's just the other abilities to me are better. Like if they don't fix Reap, then I may try out Maelstrom. But there's been too many cases with Reap where somebody's running away and I Reap them, and I would think to myself, man, if I didn't have Reap, I would not be able to even catch this guy. So Gravity Well. Gravity Well is great. All the way into Gravity Well. If you would only want to use Gravity Well if that person has no stamina, so if they're recharging their stamina from 0 to 100 during the exhaustive state, use it, because you can dodge Gravity Well and you would not get caught by it. And if you get hit by Gravity Well, you cannot dodge, you cannot block, you can attack, but you cannot do anything else, and you move really slow. So that's the time that you want to do as much damage as possible, trying to kill them before Gravity Well is over. I pair Reap with Gravity Well because when you first pull out Gravity Well, they're most likely going to be slow walking, not doing anything, allowing you to hit them in the back and shit. And once Gravity Well explodes at the end of 3 seconds, by the time those 3 seconds are over, they walked out of the explosion range. So you would want to Reap them into the center of Gravity Well so they get hit by the explosion. And the last perk here with Gravity Well, gain 20% Fortify. This is great in single, great in group PvP, because it gains Fortify for you and any of your group, not even group members, but anybody, any other person on your faction inside the Gravity Well. They all get Fortify for 20% Fortify. That's great. There's only 3 seconds, but that could save your life. It could allow you to beat on a lot of people, or it could come in handy in 1v1. So this is what I would generally use in open world PvP. Now, if this was wars, we're doing a war PvP where things needed to, I had a healer, I didn't need to worry about health as much. I would get rid of feed, and I would get rid of critical gains. And instead, I would get Center of Attention. So while holding a Great Axe, gain 10% damage when 3 or more foes are within 4 meters, and Crowded Protection. So you get 10% damage absorption for the same thing. I would use this instead, because again, when you're in wars and Great Axe, almost all the time you're going to be surrounded by this amount of people, because you're going to be going in there. If this was open world PvP, chances are you would not even, you may not even have a chance to have this even activated if you weren't charging into a group, or there wasn't a lot of melee guys. The thing with this though, is the dummies in the fort would also count as enemies. So if you were to lure somebody to the 2 dummies on the left or right hand side, and you were fighting one person, you would get the proc for both of these. So that is, whether they intended that bug or not, or if it even is a bug, that is possible to do that. Another way you could use Execute is pairing it with Gravity Well. So obviously the person cannot block or dodge while inside Gravity Well. So what perfect time? There's no other perfect time to use Execute than during that time, especially because you have 3 seconds. That should be enough time for you to dish out Execute. Now, again, since it is single target, that is why I do not use it. But that is also another case, besides the exhaustive state, is to use Gravity Well. Those are only 2 ways I would ever use those attacks, or ever use Execute, is only if they're stuck in Gravity Well, or they were stuck in an exhaustive state from draining out their stamina. So that's a Great Axe. So let's go over my Hatchet build. Hatchet build, instantly, Berserker, all the way. There's no pair for that. I shouldn't even need to explain why it's so good. But in case anybody does not know, Berserker provides CC immunity. You can only get stunned. You can't get knocked down. So that instantly puts a lot of weapons, like Spear, it's pretty shitty going up against a Berserker guy, and the only thing that you can do to stop them from attacking you is the vault kick. You can't sweep them, you can't leg sweep them to get them knocked down. There's none of that. None of that's going to work. Feral Rush, I go all into Feral Rush to root people. Not so much for this damage, but for anything, actually. It's just to root, and it also is another interrupt. It will actually interrupt your attack if if Reap was on cooldown, or you didn't have, you were trying to do your solo PvP. Feral Rush will interrupt a healer or another move that you're trying to predict. That's something that is not gridded. I go with Against All Odds, increase base damage by 10%. Again, I do not use Hatchet in group PvP. I just totally use it for Feral Rush and Berserker and Effective Throw, like I use it for the abilities. And I go with Fortifying Strikes. You get that fortify 15% seconds. That's pretty much, you can always get 50% fortify uptime. And I also go with Relentless Fury. You could either open up with a heavy attack to make sure you get the first 3 attacks will be 30% increased damage, and then follow up with the heavy attack. Or you can just do the 3 light attacks and then follow up with the heavy attack, so your next combo will always be increased damage. I do not go with Desperate Refresh. I do not go with Raging Torrent. Raging Torrent, to me, it's a bad ability because it makes you stand still in place, and you could get 1 hit off of it first, but right when you get a hit on or hit off, that person is going to just dodge out of the way and dodge every other attack. So this is useless. Defy Death, it's a stupid ability, and it should be the only ability that you would want to go to because it allows you to escape and you're invulnerable for 3 seconds. It's pretty silly. Also go with the Ranged Strikes. Targets below 30% health. Light and heavy attacks still 20% more damage. And now for the throwing tree. I do Critical Throw because that increases critical hit chance of all attacks by 5%. That's a must. And then Rejuvenating Crits. So every time you hit a crit, you get 10% more, or 10 more stamina. Also go full into Effective Throw. And then also do Exploitation. So Effective Throw is the only weapon or the only ability in the game that applies a disease, and disease, as it says here, reduces target's healing efficiency by 30%. That's a must for anybody using Berserk, a healer, anybody running away, trying to pop potions. This is great, and the tooltip is actually incorrect here. It lasts 8 seconds, not 5 seconds. So this increases duration disease. So what says here, it lasts 8 seconds if you're below 30% health. But in reality, it lasts 8 seconds no matter what health you're at. And this just creates a AoE of the disease. So if you walk into it, then you get the 8-second debuff. And this increases all attacks deal 15% more damage to targets with the active debuff. So for 8 seconds, by the time that Effective Throw is over, just a few more seconds, you're gonna get it back. Especially if you have armor pieces with a cooldown reduction, you can bring this down from 15 seconds to 12 seconds or so. So it's almost 100% uptime on Effective Throw, and almost 100% uptime you can get Exploitation up. So if you were solely just using Hatchet, you can get a lot of damage out from this. Now, you could go with Accumulate Power. There's arguments that you can do it instead of doing, Relentless Fury, or instead of even doing any of these. But this is what works best for me. I don't go with Frenzy Purge because it's a 60-second cooldown, and that's just not going to happen very often. There's no point in doing it when you have Berserk. Desperate Refresh. It could have its uses, but how often will you be below 30% health if you're going to have Berserk up so much? It's going to heal you. By the time this happens, there's an argument to be made. If you didn't have Berserk and you were trying to get Berserk back, maybe I should turn around and attack this guy so I can get 2% reduction on every hit to get Berserk back. I can understand that point. That might be a thing to do. But for me, this is what works for me really well. I had no issues with it in PvP. So this was my build in the closed beta for solo PvP. Now let me show you the hammer, which is what I use for group PvP. Now Warhammer, it was a unique situation where I was running out of abilities to even pick because there were so many things that I felt like weren't really necessary. So for my build, I went with Armor Breaker, 3 points. So this penetrates 35% of the target's armor. adds grit, and also rends the target for 15% damage for 10 seconds. 10 seconds is a long time, especially when Armor Breaker is only on a 12-second cooldown. That means you can have that up all the time. And I went with exhaustive attacks. All Warhammer abilities apply exhaust, slowing target stamina regeneration by 15% for 5 seconds. With how replenishful stamina was in closed beta, this was a nice add-on, even though 15% doesn't really account for nothing when stamina. You can just exhaust all your stamina and you get it back in 3 seconds to begin with. So this wasn't really necessary to get. Yeah, that's what I got in Juggernaut, the ability. And I went with the passive after I went through the other abilities, so let me do the other abilities first. I did increase damage absorption by 10% if surrounded by 2 or more players. I did Shockwave all the way because that is a stun and it's a weaken. This is one of the only AoE stuns in the game. So this is great if you're fighting a lot of targets and you use this AoE stun, and then you'll be stunned for 2 seconds and you can single focus down one guy while the other guys are stunned, which is technically like a sleep, because if you hit them while they're stunned, it's going to knock them out of the stun. Also went with Path of Destiny, which is the range kind of shockwave. This will stagger the target and also interrupt them. So if somebody was running away, you could do this and it'll stagger them for a second. Or if you got caught in ice storm or ice shower or the snow globe, you could use this to free yourself, because once you hit the person hitting with ice gauntlet, it's going to stagger them, giving you a second window to jump out of the snow globe and also get unrooted, because presumably they were rooting you while you're sitting there. I also went with, Guarded Sprint, reduced damage taken by 10% while sprinting. Concussive Impact, 50% damage against targets affected by Warhammer debuffs, and with the stamina exhaust, in any of these, with the Shockwave ability, that means they're going to have debuffs on them. Also, Prevailing Spirit, regain 35% of your damage dealt its health when using Crowd Crusher. This is a must. And then Aftershock, whenever targets affected by a crowd control effect, they're slowed by 20% for 4 seconds. This also counts as a debuff. Now this is where I ran out of abilities to get, or really ran out of stuff to get. Like everything else was just kind of, didn't make sense. So I just did cooldowns are reduced by 7%, just so I can get power through the pain for 1 second after taking damage, until 35% extra damage. So there was no other reason for me to get this, because I'm not using hammer. And I think I just got facilitated expedition so you get the haste, because most of the time, with these abilities, they're going to have an active debuff. So anytime you hit them with any kind of attack, you're going to get that haste. But you will lose the haste ability. Like this, the moment you switch out a hammer, you're going to lose this ability or lose this buff, this haste buff, and it kind of loses its potential. Alright, so now reasons why I do not use Clear Out. So since I'm pairing Great Axe with Hammer, I don't want to get people away from me, I want to keep people close to me. So I would never use Clear Out to knock people away from me. It's counterintuitive against the play I'm trying to do. Now this might work out for you if you're playing Hammer a different way. If you're playing it more defensively, like you're trying to protect your healer, or trying to get people off your healer, or you're trying to do something defensively, then yeah, go for it. Mighty Gavel. Mighty Gavel, you would need to pair it with Wrecking Ball, because you will not be hitting Mighty Gavel on any target if they're moving. The only time that you will be landing this is if you're knocked down on the ground first, or you stun them. So either you pair it with Wrecking Ball or Shockwave, or you just don't use it at all. Now, this will be okay for doing, this does a lot of damage, but Wrecking Ball, you'll hit a lot of people, especially the only way you're going to hit a lot of people is if you get this breathing room, but 1.5 meters, that's pretty close. They have to be right on top of you. And chances are, they will not be right on top of you, or they'll dodge out of it, or they'll block it. There's too many things that make it seem like this is not a good ability compared to Shockwave, for instance. Because, that's a 4 meter radius. Yeah, it's not doing a lot of damage, but it's stunning them. And that opens up for more abilities. So that's why I do not go with Wrecking Ball. The Fortify is great, but it's only 4 seconds long. But what's the point of using it, right? Mighty Gavel, that's going to be really the big damage ability, right? Because it allows you to get 2 hits during it. But chances are, you hit them with Wrecking Ball, you hit them with the first Mighty Gavel, and you spec all the way into it. By the time you get your second attack off, they're going to be out of the way, dodge rolled out of the way, avoiding the attack. Armor Breaker, it does almost just as much damage on a much shorter cooldown, and it decreases their target absorption, and it penetrates their armor. So this is going to generally do overall more damage than Mighty Gavel ever would, even with its 2 attacks. The cooldowns is too long on it. So that is my hammer build, and those are the reasons why I picked the abilities that I did and the abilities I did not. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the next one. Peace.